I'd like to turn today's program over to Darren Cunningham. Darren, the floor is yours.
Welcome to today's webinar, which is going to focus on a growing challenge and I think opportunity, which is eliminating the silos that are starting to develop around software as a service and platform as a service applications and platforms. This webinar is really going to be focused on people who are using the Informatica platform today, particularly PowerCenter. We have a pretty rich agenda, and with that we want to dive right in. So we're going to provide a little bit of an overview of some challenges and some of the opportunities around data integration and cloud computing. And Ron Dawson is our head of product management, who's been with Informatica for a long, long time. In the management side of some of the core on-premise technologies from day one, as well as driving our cloud data integration strategy. So he's really well versed in all aspects of the Informatica suite technology. And with that, we're going to spend quite a bit of time in today's webinar really diving into core products with some pretty deep dive demos. We're also going to give you a sneak peek for the folks on the phone who are already taking advantage and running Informatica Cloud. We're going to spend a little bit of time at the end of the presentation providing you a bit of a sneak peek into our upcoming summer release. So I want to remind you to use the chat panels. Usually have a lot of interesting discussions, particularly when we get to the demos. So please do chime in, and we will try to get to as many as we can on the live webinar, as well as follow up with you in email. So before I keep going, I want to put up a quick couple questions. You go to the polling area of your screen. To ask you, first of all, just to get a sense of who's attending today. Apologies for those who will be listening to the recording later. Who is currently using Informatica PowerCenter for the data integration? You can just put yes or no that you are or you are not today. That would be helpful for us. And secondly, how did you hear about Informatica Cloud? Is this the first time you're hearing about it? Are you actively engaged in evaluating a cloud data integration solution? Or C, you heard about it from Salesforce.com and the App Exchange? So take a quick second to give us your answers, and so those will come up so everyone else can see as well. Let's just take a second to show everybody the results. We're on our screen here as well. Okay, so hopefully we'll be able to display those for everyone else to see what the responses are. We've got the majority here are currently using Informatica PowerCenter. Many did not answer. And then this is your first time hearing about Informatica Cloud. Okay, so that's sort of what we expected, and that's great. So let's keep going. So what we want to talk about is enterprise. More and more organizations are procuring applications, whether it's Salesforce.com or the surrounding parts of Salesforce, FA, HR, EPs moving to the cloud. So a lot of adoption happening around cloud applications. Exciting time in that area. And what we found at Informatica, and working closely in particular with our partners at Salesforce.com, is that to be valuable, these applications must be able to integrate with your existing systems. And for large companies, have this opportunity to start fresh with a clean slate and be 100% cloud. You've got a lot of legacy systems, many of which may or may not move to the cloud over time. What to see is that a lot of the implications for these applications actually started outside the centralized IT domain. So divisions or departments, many organizations now we work with are actually consolidating instances or orgs of Salesforce together into more of a centralized instance. What can happen is you get a sort of a spaghetti situation of point-to-point integration, as well as what some call, even IT have called, SaaS sprawl. Is really over the last few months in particular that there's kind of been a big point where the the value of cloud deployment is understood, is really maximized when these systems are integrated. Otherwise, you have a huge problem with data fragmentation, and disconnected systems equals lack of trust, also equals lack of adoption. So we work very closely with Salesforce to help drive adoption, and integration is really a key driver of that, particularly integrating the front office and the back office systems. We've also seen a shift where IT is now much more involved in the overall cloud computing strategy for the company. And this is typically top-down initiative from CIO and above to really ensure that in many cases there's a cloud-first strategy that is coming into the organization. We've even seen the U.S. Federal government where they've adopted a cloud-first mindset. So what that now is IT has to start thinking much more about accountability, about governance, and what some are calling cloud control. And in a way that can also enable the self-service to the business. So you don't want to slow down business continuity and innovation, but to make sure that in the hybrid IT reality that we're now in, you're able to deliver both cloud-to-cloud integration and cloud-to-ground integration. So whether it's software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service, you have to really keep these systems connected, communicating. Informatica can be not only on-ramp to the cloud, we can ensure that we're enabling really the interstate between these systems, so clear communication, transparency, and trust. So one of the things we want to talk about, why we built the cloud service that we will be diving into now, is that we wanted to really help align the business groups who really were the early adopters of a lot of the cloud applications and platforms, the more traditional IT organizations who already be running systems like Informatica's platform. Very easy to use cloud service to empower some of the, in many cases, CRM administrators, sales operations, marketing managers, people who are kind of very focused on one or two, but in particular we found, around the Salesforce.com implementation itself, give them the tools that they need, but also ensure that IT has the governance and control that they're going to require. So 2006, we laid a roadmap at Informatica. We put out a press release. We talked about it at Informatica World. We've got really a three-pronged strategy of building out connectivity, building out purpose-built cloud integration services, and then evolving to a cloud data integration platform. With a separate R&D group, we've really allowed this group to grow organically within the company. So many of you on the phone have probably connected with some of the Informatica cloud sales team that works closely with the Informatica, overall Informatica organization to help these groups move towards a complementary cloud integration offering. So we've been very successful in this area of the business, and very, very proud to be able to say that we've been recognized 3 years in a row on the App Exchange as the #1 data integration solution, and we now have over 1,300 companies running Informatica Cloud. So you can InformaticaCloud.com and learn more. We have a trust site where you can go and see the volume of data we're moving every day. We're now running over 80,000 jobs a day and running over 500 million transactions a day. So pretty heavy lifting happening through the cloud-based service. And before I hand it over to Ron, I wanted just to give you a little more context if you're new. For the majority of the folks who filled out the polling question, many of you had not heard of Informatica Cloud prior to this webinar, so welcome to it. We have really multiple ways to solve cloud data integration problems. And it started with connectors. So we have a Power Exchange family. We have Power Exchange for Salesforce and Power Exchange for web services. We've now introduced multiple cloud, purpose-built cloud services, and we can continue to innovate in this area in these three dimensions. So to kind of wrap up the introduction, and wanted to also remind you to feel free to chime in with questions. Many of you probably will wait until Ron dives into the product. The reason we introduced Informatica Cloud, and where we're really seeing a lot of traction, is to deliver some level of controlled self-service. We have a multi-tenant system, so really focused on rapid deployment, ease of use, rapid upgrades, subscription pricing, and helping to drive adoption of particular applications, and where we've tended to focus is on Salesforce.com as a partner in this market. From perspective, as I mentioned, the benefit of extending the Informatica platform to the cloud is really to help to kind of stand up some of the rogue tools that we see cropping up. We see a lot of companies that will not necessarily choose to extend Informatica, and then a group will start to use another tool that will hit a ceiling pretty quickly. It might solve an initial problem, but it's going to lead to downstream manageability, enterprise class issues that company might not be known for compared to Informatica. These are some of the benefits we're seeing around from an IT perspective of cloud data integration. So with that, hand it over to Ron, and we're going to pretty flight of things he wants to walk through. So with that, Ron, you might also want to spend some time explaining the architecture of the Informatica Cloud Service.
Hey, thank you, Darren. Thank you very much. So, everyone, I'll be spending the majority of my time here in this webinar in the actual product doing demos and going over really these three key bullet points here. I'm going to start off with a demonstration and discussion about the Informatica Cloud Services. So I'm there to do a full-blown demo. And as I'm actually doing that, I will also relate it back to the folks that are on the call that are familiar with PowerCenter. How do the two work together? How does a company that has cloud and PowerCenter share information between the two so you as an IT person have insight and control into what's happening in both environments? And then at the end, I will also go through some functionality in our new summer release that I believe will be something that will be after for the folks that are existing PowerCenter customers. We've heard very specific requirements from you folks, and I'm happy to say that a lot of that is making it into this next release. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop and jump into it. Okay. Take a quick moment to turn off my IM so that people aren't bugging me while I'm doing the demo.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so slide slightly. I'm not going to jump right into the demo right away. I do want to show one quick slide here about the architecture. So for those that want to know what exactly is happening here with Informatica Cloud, that's what I'm going to spend just a few moments on here. Our Informatica users are familiar with it. So what's on the left-hand side should be familiar to you. But for you that aren't familiar with Informatica, PowerCenter, PowerCenter is the market-leading enterprise data integration solution. And what you see on the left-hand side is very typical of common client-server-based enterprise software. Three-tiered client-server architecture. There's a client component, a repository, and the server or the engine. And initially, when we started this business unit focused on cloud computing, or at the time it was software as a service, once we thought, well, Salesforce is the biggest player there. We'll just create a Power Exchange for Salesforce, which is our connector for Salesforce.com that you can use with our on-premise offering. And we just create the connector and go off and offer some level of subscription-based pricing. That should solve the problem. And in the cases where we were selling to our existing install base, the PowerCenter teams, that was exactly what they were looking for. It really was just a connector to Salesforce. But as we go a little bit broader into the Salesforce community, it became very evident that there was actually a set of integration use cases that were being taken on by the application owners of Salesforce, or the business. In many cases, it was somebody like a Salesforce administrator, or even somebody, let's say, like a sales operations person that would be tasked to do things like, hey, this sales rep has got all these contact records that they want to upload into Salesforce. Please go off and do that. So these things that really were tasks that those folks were able or wanted to deal with themselves and didn't necessarily want to hand it over to IT to do. So we recognize in those kind of use cases, which 5 years ago was many times it was 80% of the requirements from a customer, the PowerCenter was a bit much. It was a little complex and was not something that this type of a user would be able to deal with. So what we tried to do is to actually recreate and build from scratch the top two layers. Our client and our repository layers were built completely from scratch to be in a true cloud multi-tenant way. So what that is, two things. First of all, the multi-tenant scalable repository is something, again, that we built from scratch to be truly multi-tenant, so it could be on the cloud. And from a user standpoint, we completely built from scratch our user interface. So for those of you familiar with Informatica PowerCenter, what you'll see in the demo looks nothing like PowerCenter. And so I think you'll all be pleasantly surprised with what you'll see here. But more of what we have from an Informatica platform standpoint, which is our engine, the processing engine itself, that was something that we decided, of course, that we did not want to rebuild that. Instead, what we did is we re-architected it so that instead of requiring a DVD to install just the engine, we shrunk it down into something that we call the Informatica Secure Agent. And we went into an 85 megabyte download that completely decoupled from the regular Informatica architecture. It's just the engine itself, and self-upgrading and self-updating. So once it's installed, you actually don't have to worry about it ever again. We deal with the upgrade behind the scenes through the engine mechanisms that we've added on. And so what customers end up doing is get into Informatica Cloud, sign up for an account, they download the secure agent, and once it's installed, it is actually sitting behind the firewall. So that's how we get access to your local on-premise systems without you to open up ports in the firewall for inbound traffic. What ends up happening is the dotted line that you see between 1 and 2, this is an outbound established connection to Informatica Cloud. You can connect to the internet using HTTPS, and now this will work fine without you having to change any firewall rules. Send metadata information about what you design in the cloud, and that's how we communicate and tell the engine what to do. From a time perspective, the agent will connect directly to these on-premise systems. It will connect directly to your cloud-based systems, likely Salesforce.com, and the data itself does not go through Informatica Cloud. Now, this is another thing to bring up because we have some security concerns that some people have raised. So the data itself doesn't go through there. All right, if there's any questions, definitely feel free to bring that up. Okay, with that, go ahead and use the chat panel, and I'll go ahead and jump right into the demo. So what you see here is that we have simply a web browser that we have open. Currently pointing to the Informatica Cloud website. This is that we actually have that is something specific just to Informatica Cloud. With all good cloud services, we have a customer login link here on our home page. And I'm going to log in using an account. I'm inside of Informatica Cloud, and I'll show you some of the services that are the most heavily used by our customers. And I'll start with a service on data replication. Now, I'm sorry because this is actually the service that most Informatica PowerCenter customers are today with Informatica Cloud. And the reason why they're doing that is this is a service that actually does things that Informatica PowerCenter actually doesn't do, or very well. And what the replication service does is it will go off the source system and a full-blown replica copy of that and store it somewhere else. The most common case here is with Salesforce.com, where people want to have either an archive copy of Salesforce on a local on-premise database, pure for archival purposes, or people want to have a local copy of the data so that they can go off and do some on-premise reporting with an on-premise reporting tool, right? So the data is stored relationally. So what the service does is through a very simple 5-step wizard, it will go off and make a replica copy of the data and store it locally on an on-premise database. So here, I'll just call this my replication demo. And I'm going to point this to my Salesforce or my Salesforce account. You'll also notice, however, is that the drop-down list shows all of my connections that I've got configured inside of Informatica Cloud. So not only can you use this with Salesforce, you can actually use this for other on-premise use cases as well. If you want to take a slice out of an enterprise data warehouse, for instance, and store it somewhere else, this is a common use case that we're seeing in that regard. All right, but on one here is you got Salesforce, and I can either choose to replicate all objects, or I can individually select objects that I want. So I can choose account object, I can choose contact object, lead, opportunity. These are it's a very common use case. The main objects, you want to store a copy of that. Let's go to step 2. For target, I choose where I want to make that replica copy, where I will store that, and here store it on my local SQL Server database. To see if this is actually configured, I have to hit Edit. And using the secure agent that I've got installed, and I'm just using my standard database connectivity information to show how to connect to this. Again, the agent's sitting on premise and will get access through your standard database protocol. I'll save this. We run it. Now, the actual database that I'm going to be replicating this to. So I've got a SQL Server Management Studio, and if I do a refresh, we see that we've just got these basic set of tables. And I chose account, contact, lead, and opportunity, and I chose a prefix of SF underscore to designate that these are the objects that are for this process. Okay, so this I didn't show, but there is a step 5 on that wizard where I can go off and schedule these things to run on an ongoing basis. So that was the only way that people use the services to run nightly or even hourly. All right, it's running now. So if we go back to the, and if I do refresh, see automatically created these objects. And go in and actually do a select. Now we replicated the objects. We are, of course, populating the data. So let me describe what's happening. For those of you, again, that are PowerCenter customers, what exactly just happened? What we do with the service is we do a few things. The very first thing that we do is we're dynamically connecting to Salesforce and looking at the metadata and dynamically creating these objects. Again, this is actually one of the pieces that PowerCenter does not do today. Right? We're dynamically creating these objects based off of what the schema looks like right now. Then we're dynamically generating the mappings in PowerCenter, go off and load back and forth. Right? Imagine if you chose all objects, let's say there's 150 standard objects in Salesforce's data model. If you're a PowerCenter person, I think you can imagine what this is like. You got to import your source, you got to create your targets, and you've got to build these mappings. Although they're very easy to do, it's very time-consuming and tedious. But better yet, what this service does is on an ongoing basis, we're going off and doing a metadata diff. So the next time that this runs, the first we'll do is we'll go connect to Salesforce. Anything changed. And those of you that already have Salesforce already know this. Sales changes very often. It's one of the big key benefits of service is it's simple and easy to use, but it also means from an IT standpoint that things are constantly changing. There is governance potentially on your Salesforce system.
Certain fields, custom objects being added, those sorts of changes.
It happens all the time. So this service actually does is the next time that it connects, it looks to see have any fields been added, changed, modified. And the first thing it does is it performs an alter table statement. So objects look exactly like Salesforce again at the time that this is running. And then it dynamically regenerates your mapping. So you can go back in, re-import your source, re-import your target, validate your mappings. All those steps are taken away. And you saw, there's a lot of steps there, and I simply did that in less than 30 seconds to walk through this wizard. So there's a lot of powerful things that are happening there. For those of you, again, that are PowerCenter customers, if you plan this out, we actually talked to an existing PowerCenter customer that has just started implementing Salesforce. They actually set aside 4 weeks in their rollout plan to deal specifically with this archive purpose. They saw this and were blown away that they would be able to take and save those 4 weeks off the project plan just by subscribing to this.
And I've seen talk to customers who are moving, 60+ million records a night with replication service. What are the main use cases? Other than being able to detect the changes, why are you doing all this replication?
I think one of them was just purely based off governance. I'm sure that just in case I got an archived copy of that data. So first and foremost, that's the underlying value prop. This use case that we see that happens very often is that people are replicating objects like account and opportunity or contact, and they're replicating that very often. Sometimes every half hour, sometimes every 10 minutes. So again, if you've got some local on-premise reporting that you already have in place and you want to supplement that with Salesforce data, you can do that.
So being able to bring data together from multiple sources, being able to bring objects, kinds of things, bring it into a central environment where they can then use their existing business intelligence systems into the data warehouse.
That's right. It's really more of your classic analytics reporting kind of a use case.
Okay. Great. Replication is, as Ron mentioned, is sort of something that more and more of our PowerCenter, Power Exchange customers are finding out about, and they're complementing what they're already doing with those technologies. At Informatica, we use Power Exchange for Salesforce for a number of data synchronization requirements, but our IT team uses data replication for a lot of the warehousing needs.
Right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and switch gears a little bit and show another service called our synchronization. Essentially, we consider a basic ETL sort of capabilities delivered out in the cloud.
So before that, I got a couple of questions coming in, Ron, and want to remind people to use the chat panels here. How do you handle the report on dynamically changing objects in Salesforce?
So now we actually store that information. There is a log file where the agent resides that stores exactly what changes were made. We are looking here, hopefully it won't likely be in this next release, but sometime later this year, we are hoping to have a report mechanism of those changes within the service itself. But it is a TBD.
And some people ask or think, is this replication the same as, say, a gold gate kind of replication for change data capture, or would you characterize it differently?
It is a little different. So again, I think the term replication is a bit loaded. In this case, specifically because something, let's say, like a Salesforce.com or other cloud services, actually have the concept of a transaction right now. So it is a much simpler way of looking at replication, and it does certain things that some of those tools don't do. Again, it's this automatic update, automatic refresh. So it is a little different than a Golden Gate-like product. Okay.
So replication is really one way, bringing it from a source down into a target. Now you're going to show the synchronization, which is more the bidirectional.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It really starts to lead into is this discussion around the business and IT collaboration. How are the two organizations going to work together? There's one mechanism to do that. Now, if you hit new, you see here is a simple 6-step wizard to perform integration, true ETL type of work. We boil down integration into your core 6 steps. Step 1, step 2, pick your source. Step 3, your target. Option that in data filters that you like. You've got a screen and a scheduler all built into the service. All right, and the typical people that are doing this again goes back to that sales operations person or that Salesforce administrator that isn't necessarily responsible for the enterprise integration of Salesforce into the rest of the organization. They're really more about the use cases that they should be responsible for. How ad hoc load of just some data from some flat files. Or maybe there's just some simple synchronization that they need to perform, and it's not really categorized as enterprise integration. So let me see how this works. I'm going to grab some account data and move it between a flat file and a database. And one, I'm just giving you the name. And two is pick my source, use my local file system, and grab this file here that contains account data. Big data preview of what's out there. I think it connects to anything that I have connectivity to. So files, databases, source instances, whatever you'd like. But here on this flat file, and then that source and my target commonly is going to be a Salesforce instance, and I would just go off and choose, let's say, the account object to do that. Okay, for this demo, I'll actually just show a true on-premise type of an integration, because I'm moving from a flat file to a database. So you don't actually have to have cloud be a source or a target.
So because Informatica Cloud is a cloud-based service, it doesn't need to integrate with a cloud-based application.
That's right, that's right.
Okay, and so the question came in as you're going along. I think you're going to get to some of this, but at some point in the presentation, to what extent is identity resolution part of the cloud offering? Example, to provide a golden record of sales contact information once synchronization has taken place.
Yeah, I'll go through that a little bit later in this demo. Okay, I pick my source, I pick my target. I optionally add any data filters that you'd like. Mapping screen. Again, this is where magic really happens. Anything that matches by name is automatically mapped over. For things that don't match, again, we've got the account name field in my flat file that goes to the name field in my database table. I can drag and drop that over, and it's now connected. And then if I've got a field, let's say like billing street on market database, two fields, address 1 and address 2, my source, I can get both address 1 and address 2, and you set by default we perform a concat. You also see that that's a hyperlink. And if I go into there, familiar to all of you that know PowerCenter, this is really an expression object that we've exposed out in the cloud. All your functions, standard data cleansing functions that come with PowerCenter. You even got the special functions to decode the if statements. And we've been positioning this to the line of business or application user, is that these functions should look very similar to Excel functions. So if they're familiar with Excel, they're able to go up and use this service. All right, we can do some powerful stuff here within Informatica Cloud. Not only do we have expression capabilities, we also do have lookup capabilities too. So we can use the standard Informatica lookup, and that would be exposed here in this screen. So you look up object, you pick your fields and your lookup fields, and then it'll return back whatever field you want as output field.
Question that's related to replication, but I think it's also relevant here. Is there a way to know if there's any DDL changes in the objects, on the object happening when the job is scheduled?
It is something right now that is stored in our log file in Informatica Cloud Secure Agent. So again, that's something that you can get access to, and we are looking to expose that in the service itself through a better reporting mechanism this year.
Okay.
All right, so we're here in step 6. So can you build and design these mappings? You can also schedule them to run wherever you want. So you can choose an existing schedule, or you can create your own schedules. Start day, start time, repeat every 5 minutes, repeat every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Right? So all the flexibility, a nice scheduler here.
Okay. So I think we want to save some time to show what's coming, and there's some schedule updates coming in the release. But I think I'll jump into some of the specific PowerCenter interoperability. So I've already got PowerCenter or PowerCenter for Salesforce. How can I take advantage of this?
Yeah, so here, this task that I just built, account load demo. So one way that you can have interoperability is, okay, let's say that the line of business user or the application user is using an Informatica Cloud. Now, what happens then? What happens if that user actually has an issue? How would you, as an Informatica PowerCenter person, be able to deal with this? And how? One way you can do that is you see that there is this download mapping XML button. I'm going to go ahead and grab that, and I'm going to save this file. So if you look at it, it's 35347. All right, go ahead and save this XML file. Because we are using the same base engine with Informatica Cloud as with PowerCenter, we are speaking the same language when it comes to the runtime piece. Which means, open up PowerCenter, and I've got PowerCenter open here. Now, take that XML file that I just exported. So if I go to Import Objects and sort this by time. All right, 413, this is a 35347. If I open it up, what we see is a PowerCenter mapping. And so what that six-step wizard created was mapping here. And if we look into this, we see it's just a standard expression object, and you see the concat transformation that I created. Right? This is important, right? So if you do have some level of self-service going to the line of business, you have control. You are able to then go off if they have issues, troubleshoot to see what's going on in the tools that you're familiar with. And even if you wanted to, let's say that the line of business starts off building this, and they say down the road, wait a minute, this is a lot more complex than I thought it was going to be. Can you now take ownership of this? You take ownership of this immediately. You simply go off, export those XMLs, import them to your PowerCenter instance, and now you can take control of those mappings. And you don't have to rebuild anything. Everything is there exactly as you would expect, and you start running this right now. And so this is something that's very powerful message for our customers, both cloud and Informatica PowerCenter. And for that are thinking about this, you might also say, hey, wait a minute, actually, this might be a useful tool for, handing forth mapping specs. And we've seen that use case come up with Informatica Cloud as well, where instead of having your analysts put up in Excel spreadsheets, then you take the spreadsheet and you open up PowerCenter and you're manually doing these things. You give them this tool, they could build out most of the mapping, you could import them, and you've got the mapping already here.
So what if you have shared responsibility? You've got one group creating fairly complex mappings to run at certain times, and you've got others that maybe a less technical group has created. How can you set up these to run sequentially or?
Yeah. So we have access to here in Informatica Cloud is what's called a task flow, which is very similar in concept to an Informatica PowerCenter workflow. So you could go off and create, or the users can create certain tasks, and then you tie that together to potentially some tasks that you're creating. And see how exactly that would work. So not only can I export metadata from Informatica Cloud to PowerCenter, I can actually do it in the other direction as well.
That was a question. Can we build a mapping in PowerCenter and import it to the cloud?
Yeah. So here we take a look. SE Salesforce, not necessarily something you want to give to your sales operation person to build themselves.
Generally, no.
That would be a bad idea. So you can use Informatica PowerCenter to build out mappings like this, or other mapping that you like really. And this control to the line of business to schedule when they need to and do the basics around that operational management. So they could create one of these mappings, and again, not only now import your objects, you would export your objects as a standard PowerCenter XML file. And done that. And you see here is I've got something here called a PowerCenter task inside of Informatica Cloud. This is that mapping XML. It's really the workflow XML. And you see objects that are inside of there. And what you've given control to the customer is they can connect to potentially a sandbox initially. They can change it after they've done some basic testing to the prod instance. And then schedule it whenever they want to. So you don't have to put it into your scheduling buckets and then have your ops team work on it. If this is something you want to retain control over, they would have the ability to do that. And again, they could use their task flow where they have some basic tasks that they need to perform ahead of time and then run the task that you built for them, vice versa. So you've got a little control there.
We have a lot of partners on this call, and some of them are really starting to take advantage of this. How is that working? How are you seeing that?
It's actually working beautifully, where it's in the case where partners will go in and help customers with some Salesforce integration, and they'll say, if there's certain things that you want to have control over, go ahead and do that. And the 20% of the work that looks pretty difficult, we'll take ownership of that and with these capabilities to supplement the work that you're doing, so that coalition story is really working quite well.
So what is the plugin?
So again, takes that concept I just showed you one step further, and this will go to some of that identity resolution stuff and some of those questions that some of you may have around that. And what this does is it allows me to not just take an Informatica mapping, but to Informatica PowerCenter maplet. Right? So the maplet can not only have shareable transformations or shareable sets of integration work, and not just share it within PowerCenter, but now you can actually share that with Informatica Cloud. Let me go back here to Informatica Cloud and look at my plugins. So dedupe, this actually uses the identity resolution stuff inside of Informatica Data Quality. And this is an Informatica maplet, where what you see is the input and output fields of the maplet, but you don't see any of the complexity of what's inside the maplet. So again, just like inside of PowerCenter, when you're missing the mapping, you just see what comes in and the results out. So you really create any maplet in PowerCenter and now push that into the cloud, so you've got some level of control over some key transformations that you want to have shared, not just within IT, but also within the line of business.
And a question came in. Can you show again where you set connections, the source and targets in the cloud?
Sure.
And then how it would fit into the plugin, just so people get that sort of the full flow.
Sure. So if you go to the configuration tab and go to connections, then you can also build and edit connections in any of our wizards. But the type of what you're connecting to. So if it's, let's say, an Oracle database, you specify your agent, and then you're giving your standard database connection information. If you're connecting to something like SAP, you're going to give your standard, IDOC information. Right? Let's actually take a look at how I would use one of these plugins. So if I do my data services tab, and let's actually look at the account dedupe. Right? Again, same wizard. Now, what the customer or the line of business user can do is they take whatever source or target that they need to connect to. And inside of step 5, the field mapping piece, we pulled in this plugin. You can see that I'm doing mapping from source to plugin. So anything they can connect to, map to the input of the plugin, and switch the context from plugin to target to get the maplet output. They can load that into any target that they'd like. So here's an example where I'm reading from Salesforce and putting the deduped records into that file so I can take a look at things as far as, how did you do as far as this matching is concerned. Another example is we've got the address validation capabilities where you take your source and targets And then step 5, again, anything that has address data, you map your street, state, name, city, and then when we return back, we need the cleansed information, and you could load that anywhere you'd like. So you provide really complex functionality that you build and control and hand off to the end user.
Well, and that I use on the marketing side with Salesforce, we have this validation plugin that first checks, against addresses as they come in from different sources, and we actually use StrikeIron, which is a partner of Informatica Cloud, who also takes advantage of our address doctor technology to match emails and then dedupe as the data is coming into our instance of Salesforce. So it's pretty cool what you can build quite quickly. Question, Ron, that came in, I think the juices are flowing here, some good questions. Can we schedule multiple mappings in the Informatica Cloud to be executed as we do in the workflow, so we can find dependencies to different mappings if we have to schedule them?
Yeah, right now the way it works is this is a workflow. So this set of task flows allows you to pick as many tasks as you'd like. Again, I will choose my PowerCenter service task and choose this MP one that I showed. So you can see there's a sequence on the left. So what order does it run? Do I stop on error? Currently it's scheduled for, or it's to run sequentially. One that is coming out in our upcoming summer release is ready to externally schedule an Informatica Cloud task. So you actually invoke that potentially through a command task inside of PowerCenter. So there's so many things that we'd be able to do. You could use a third-party scheduler to tie together PowerCenter and Cloud. Lots of flexibility.
So for limited time, and we promised a sneak preview of some of the upcoming Informatica Cloud summer release functionality. Can you cover that before we get to a wrap up?
Yeah, there's two very specific pieces of functionality that I wanted to highlight. We're actually coming out with a lot of very powerful features in this summer release. But one piece here that I think would be interesting for this crowd is we are doing things around security and how people are going to be able to, how we can control what people are doing within the organization. And we have this concept of a sub-organization. So let's say you are running an ICC, an Integration Competency Center, or a Center of Excellence, or something along those lines. What you can do is essentially an Uber org. You can create sub-orgs for finance, one for marketing, one for sales. You would have the ability to see across what all different groups are doing, but the individual groups themselves would only have access to the information and mappings and things that are created within their org. So that's the thing that's, again, here's just a screenshot of that functionality, but conceptually I think we can understand how powerful this is. And then similarly, what we have is this concept of user groups that we're coming out with. The group is similar to your Windows security or your Linux or Unix-based security, where you can create groups and then specify whether you have create, view, edit, delete, run, or administrator capabilities on this object. So you specify what, you can come up with very specific roles. Maybe there's an operations role that only run and view but not edit. There's a developer role that maybe can only create and run but only have access to certain connections. Not only can you set these permissions globally, you can also at an individual object layer, whether it's individual task, a connection, a task flow, you can specify these same sorts of privileges on each object. So again, very much have control over who sees what within Informatica Cloud.
Let's focus on some of the enterprise requirements. You also mentioned being able to kick off schedulers. I know we're coming out with a REST API. What else might that make possible?
So not only will you be able to schedule tasks with this API that we're coming out with, you'll also be able to grab metadata from Informatica Cloud. Specifically, we'll start off with operational metadata, statistics around what ran, what didn't run, failure information, and have that be something that you could store locally on an on-premise database. So again, it's something that a lot of companies have in an ops database. This is something you could use to integrate cloud with that.
Okay, great. So back to, wanted to provide you a few resources, and Ron, while we've got you on the hot seat here as the head of management for Informatica Cloud, and someone who knows PowerCenter so well, this question came in with the offering. How will this be complementary or competitive, or kind of a replacement for what we're doing in PowerCenter?
That's a very, very good question. Personally, don't see it being something that will be competitive with PowerCenter. Our use cases and who we're building the product for really is for a different person that usually, traditionally, has not had access to PowerCenter, nor wants access to PowerCenter. Different use cases. You'll actually see is Informatica Cloud, very specific services that are geared for very specific use cases. This will be a product that you would be able to build any sort of enterprise integration that you want. We're not looking to replace design capabilities in the cloud. Keep the client aspects really are simple, easy to use, wizard-based services that really don't go hand with complex enterprise integration.
Okay, great. I also want to spend a minute talking about the Informatica Marketplace and some of our prepackaged integrations that are available there. But we'll be right at the end. So really quickly, just to kind of wrap up, thanks, Ron, for a pretty compelling and deep demonstration. If you want to go deeper or set up a specific session with us, we'd be happy to follow up with you to do that as well. But definitely look at informaticacloud.com. A lot of people want to know, well, how is this priced and packaged? What are the different options available to me? And the first thing to note is the top of this arrow here, up and to the right. We have an edition called Informatica Cloud Enterprise. Really, a lot of our larger customers, existing customers, are looking at because it combines the Power Exchange capabilities for Salesforce with the cloud service. Definitely like to talk to you about that if you're an organization that wants to get the best of both worlds. I have a standard, basic, and express edition. So we follow the packaging edition approach similar to Salesforce.com. The bottom line is really, as we see it, and as we're starting to be recognized in the market for, we really feel like we have the most flexible and powerful data integration service to get you to the cloud. So you're migrating, whether you're synchronizing, whether you're replicating, we're continuing to focus on these specific use cases, and you're going to see us build out more of kind of prepackaged content, which really leads us to this resource slide. So if you haven't already checked out the Informatica Marketplace, you should definitely do so. It's really, we're starting to see more of our partners build what we call blocks, or in our case, plugins for Informatica Cloud. They're taking advantage of their existing domain or application expertise. A couple of partners who have built integrations from, say, SAP to Salesforce. So predefined mapping that accelerate a project. We're not saying that this will be, done, these mappings in and away you go. Every customer's got customization requirements and differences. But in many cases, for SAP, for example, a lot of organizations want to do account synchronization. They want to make sure their accounts and contacts are synchronized between these systems. Or they do opportunity to order integration. A very use case for us with Salesforce.com, where you've got accounts, contacts, and opportunities that your sales team's working with, living with every day. You don't want to have them be required to go over to an order system to get order status. Where a lot of customers start to look at chatter integration, where they can take advantage of the chatter stream and have update order status and invoice information be streaming into their chatter feeds. So some pretty cool innovations coming thanks to the flexibility of the Force.com platform as well. So you can look at the marketplace. We've built out a cloud community that's become very active on the Informatica community site. We also have a trust site, trust.informaticacloud.com, if you're interested in seeing what's happening on the service every day. And a lot of videos featuring Mr. Ramanath and others on our YouTube channel. So that wraps up today's presentation. Thank you for your participation, and we'd definitely like to talk to you more about what this means and how you can really extend the Informatica footprint and get more from your cloud investments within the cloud.
Thank you for joining us. This concludes our program. You can now disconnect.